the cinematic techniques of suspense to make a belief like karma come alive in the minds of viewers. Shutter is a uniquely Asian psychological thriller.
We think Asian horror films play with the theme of inner fear. We like moments in horror films with suspense, where we don't know what will happen, or how or why the ghost appears. Sometimes it appears in an unexpected way, just like in Shutter. We tried to create new forms of suspense. Some moments in a dark room with lights flashing. We enjoyed this kind of creative approach.
Another acclaimed Thai filmmaker who finds that the horror genre offers a unique canvas for telling stories is Eka Chai. He is about to make a film about the ultimate fear, the fear of death. His latest film, The Coffin, is inspired by a Buddhist ceremony where a person plays out their own funeral. It may seem taboo, but it's believed that this death ritual will rid the soul of bad karma. Filming of The Coffin has not even started yet, but it looks to have the formula for another Asian horror hit.
I think in the end, we are very interested in the concept of the ability to cheat death, or what happens if you are able to tamper with destiny. You know, it's just a very seductive idea. It has that appeals no matter whether you're in Bangkok or you're in New York. You know, there are stuff that people are curious. Curiosity is a very good germ to culminate good horror.
For Eka Chai, horror films are not just a cheap thrill, but a way to tell a much more profound story.
I think good horror films are morality tales. You know, while horrors are dealing with ghosts, but they are much more about human and how they deal with each other. The ghosts are almost like a vehicle that a filmmaker or storytellers use to make a very dramatic point about something. And I tend to think that there are several stories that just have to be told in a horror genre or in a supernatural thriller.
Death and Asian ideas about the afterlife are a rich territory for filmmakers, particularly in Hong Kong, the backdrop for one of the most famous Asian horror films of recent years. "21st century Hong Kong. The city is a bustling financial and commercial center. But behind the modern facade are ancient Chinese beliefs about the afterlife. Souls of the dead exist alongside the living in an invisible world just within our reach. Each 7th month in the Chinese calendar, people from Hong Kong observe the Hungry Ghost Festival. It's a period when the gates of hell are flung open. Worldly possessions are burned for ghosts to better their place in the afterlife. The line between the living and the dead is sacred and must be respected. But what would happen if you could see the afterlife? This is the premise of The Eye, one of the biggest films to emerge from the Asian horror scene in recent years. The film tells the story of a woman who is able to see ghosts of the dead all around her in the streets of modern-day Hong Kong.
One of the ways that the eye expresses Asian ideas about the afterlife is the sense that the dead are very much present, the ancestors are very much present. This is not seen as hocus pocus, and the crisis over how can these exist together in modern Asian identity. And one of the ways that it's played out is through the hauntings, through modern day Hong Kong, but also simply of people having to come to terms with things which are not scientific facts.
Taoist beliefs in the third eye, or yin-yang eyes, mean that there are some people with the ability to actually see ghosts in this world. The Eye gives this idea a twist based on modern technology by creating a plotline that a blind girl who receives a cornea transplant is suddenly able to see ghosts in the streets of Hong Kong. In the film, there are ghostly apparitions on almost every corner. For famed filmmaking brothers Oxide and Danny Pang, The Eye was an opportunity to visualize the normally invisible world of the afterlife.
We also looked to people who we believed had the third eye and are able to see ghosts to better understand the environment of a ghost encounter and what ghosts look like. Research was very important because what we had in the script and how we visualized it on film had to be convincing in order to make the audience believe the film.
In The Eye, it's not the ghosts that are scary, but the experiences of the young woman Moon that the audience finds unsettling. As she regains her vision, she realizes that she's crossed the line between the living and the dead. And what she sees is terrifying. A black, shadowy figure representing a Taoist Grim Reaper comes to claim souls for reincarnation. But those souls with unfinished business are left hanging around in limbo, haunting the Hong Kong streets where they once lived.
I've seen a lot of horror films from both East and West, and I realized that a lot of these horror films tend to have ghosts appearing at night time, and that people who encounter ghosts usually have to venture into strange places before things happen. So we wanted to do something different. It's about the atmosphere. That's the direction we are going for. We did away with green lighting or night settings, but instead we magnified the atmosphere. The ghost scenes and the way ghosts appear is not just for a few shocking seconds.
An already crowded Hong Kong, populated with ghosts from the afterlife, resonated with local audiences.
The Eye could be, for a Hong Kong audience, what something like Blair Witch Project is to North Americans who live in more rural environments and know how scary the woods are. Because Hong Kongers live in crowded urban environments, they don't know how scary the woods are. With The Eye, a regular Hong Konger, having these types of things happen to them could well be more scary. Its very normalcy makes it scary.
我諗佢可能放錯張相啊！呢個邊個嚟㗎？
呢個咪你嚟嘅咯？你仲未認到自己個樣咩？
The Eye is much more than a film about seeing the dead. Like many Asian horror films, the dead look to the living to resolve their issues. Moon discovers that not only does she have the eye of the dead woman, but that her spirit is possessing her. She must uncover the woman's identity and find out how she died.
我知你一直都想我嚟呢度，而家我嚟咗，你有咩想同我講？
Only then can Moon rid herself of possession and set the soul of the ghost to rest. In Hong Kong, people are constantly reminded of their obligations to the dead. Because of this, The Eye spoke to a wide audience.
This connection to ancestors, especially in Chinese cultures, right? These are things that we don't have the same way in the West to the same degree. So a greater sense of coexisting with the spiritual world in that level. There are all these films that are having to do with haunting, especially as a kind of playing out of that kind of drama, of people who lived in the past, are present, and need to be responded to.
The Eye was a box office hit throughout Asia and also popular in the West. The successful formula of Asian horror is winning audiences well beyond its own local borders.
Urban Asians, whether they're living in Tokyo, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Hong Kong, or Bangkok, may have more to do with each other than people living in the countrysides anywhere in Asia. So they may share some of the same fears, the same concerns. And as such, they're going to want to watch the same types of horror movies.
Hollywood is looking to films like The Eye to reproduce success in the West. It's now one in a long line of Asian horror movies to be bought up in recent years. But when Hollywood gets its claws on Asian horror, just what will get lost in translation? The rights to the Asian horror films Jelangkung from Indonesia, Shutter from Thailand, and The Eye from Hong Kong have all been snapped up by Hollywood.
I think Hollywood is keen on remaking Asian horror films because, frankly, Hollywood is getting low in the idea bank. I mean, they've remade everything from, you know, the Dukes of Hazzard to George of the Jungle. What's next?
Recycle is the latest offering from the Pang brothers of Hong Kong. The film tells the story of a young horror writer whose discarded ideas come back to haunt her. The film is a parable of the way the West is now looking to recycle successful Asian horror for their own audiences.
When these films are remade for the US, there is the danger that some of the resonance in the plot, which may have worked in the original context, may